I want to dive into that Tennessee beating NC State game, right? You can forget about the Tennessee-Martin game now. So we're not doing the full week rundown like we just did on the podium. Let's focus on number 12 Tennessee beating NC State. Because the reason why I bring it back up is on Friday, Dennis was out, but we had Graham. We called this a litmus test. Mm-hmm. Like, it felt very much like State was going to find out if they belonged with the teams at the top, right? Like if you lose to the BYUs, you lose to the Ole Misses, and then you get 4 or 5 tune-up games to fix things. If you go into that Tennessee game and you really look overmatched, it starts to get to the point where, right, we're going to start taking some chances here. We're going to start figuring some things out. But at the same time, if you beat them, then it can, all right, you learned your lesson, all those sorts of things. The litmus test. What are the results? I think they belonged. They belonged. It was a battle of peers against the number 12 team in the country. And that's solid for them.
And 79-70 final score,
yep.
Neutral site in San Antonio.
DJ, who I saw on social media, is picking up the nickname 3J Horn.
Okay.
3J Horn.
I like it.
They don't. The 3J was open because 3J Burns just didn't make a lot of sense. 3J Horn knocked down 4 threes. DJ Burns, who we did mention, scored 15. But here's the thing that I liked from DJ Burns. He was running the show. He was picking up assists. He was distributing. He was passing out of double teams. He was seeing the court. That is when their offense is running best. Is when their shooters are knocking down shots, right? The spacing is there, and DJ Burns can be in the middle of it all and orchestrating like a maestro, like a conductor. That's the word I was looking for, like a music conductor. That's what I think they can do when they're at their best. And to see that done against Tennessee is strong. So I leave the game with 2 thoughts. And I want to talk about more players, by the way, 2 very interesting players that appeared in that game. But I look at that game as a team in one of 2 ways. One is, if they play as well as they played against Tennessee, they're going to win a lot of games in the ACC. Right? If they play as well as they get against Tennessee, they'll win against, I would say, half of the ACC teams every time they play that well. Another 25%, it'll be more of a crapshoot. And then the top 25, they could get them a couple times, right? The top 25%. Like, I think if they play that well, their impact, they'll have their fingerprint on the ACC season. But also, sometimes I think Kevin Keatts' NC State programs kind of get caught in that spot, which is they beat the teams that they should definitely beat. They lose the teams that they should lose to, and then they mix in a couple in the middle of the road, and you walk away pleased but not ecstatic, right? You walk away, all right, it was a good season, but not, oh, we really had a chance. Mm-hmm. And
good but not great.
Yeah, and at some point you have to break through that ceiling and go do something. And with this team, right, all the transfers, you had Casey Morsell, DJ Burns, who were established from last year, coming back. You had some depth, Middlebrooks and all these guys. Like, I really liked what they were bringing in, and that Tennessee game is kind of right where they should be, right? You lose by 9. It was a neutral court game against a top 15 team. Hard to be mad at it, right? That's kind of, it was good. You look like you belonged. You look like a peer. But you're also, it's hard to be mad at, but hard to be happy with, and you're just kind of there. That's tough. It's the in certain sports they call it the treadmill of mediocrity, where you're too good to make any big changes, right? But not good enough to really get any gigantic awards and accolades. So you just stay on that treadmill running in place. The team is still developing. The team is still growing together. There are new players consistently being added to the mix, and they have room to grow, but I need to see them win that game against Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And they have plenty of top 25 teams on the rest of the schedule to go get those wins, but I need to see them win those games. Let's talk about the new players, right? Because these are the 2 super interesting players I talked about. So coming into the year, we knew they had 7 new faces, right? We knew they had 7 transfers. And we said there would be kind of an onboarding process, right? There'd be a chemistry that needed to be built. There'd need to be all these things. Well, They started getting it together, and then MJ Rice came back and got healthy. MJ Rice played in this game, but just 13 minutes. Went 0 for 3 from the field. I wanted to see more of him, and the fact that I didn't concerns me a little bit, right? Because he played 10 minutes in his first time out, 16 minutes in his next time out. Now in this game, a game where I think a player like MJ Rice could have really helped them, right? A transfer from Kansas, his athletic pedigree or profile, his recruiting pedigree, all of that adds up to somebody you'd probably want to get a few more minutes, and they actually gave him less minutes than they gave him in the previous game against Tennessee Martin. That's not him at his best. So now we have to kind of reevaluate how quickly he can work into a full-time role if they're pulling back the reins in a game that I think was significantly more important than the previous. And then also Kam Woods played. Yeah. So think about this. You have a bunch of like a whole starting lineup amount of new faces at the beginning of the year. You start to get used to it. You start to get used to the rotations. You throw MJ Rice in the mix for a couple games. That is a new super high-profile transfer. He's there. You're starting to get used to it. Boom, throw another new face in the mix, Kam Woods, and this is tough for that team, right? Like, do they have anyone they could add in 2 weeks, like another new player? Was that the thing? Every couple of weeks, you're just gonna get a new contributor to the lineup? Because Kam Woods played based on the two-time transfer eligibility waivers not being enforced, and now he can play even though they didn't think he could play and they were waiting on waivers, but now you don't need a waiver, and that's a whole political conversation for another day. But
literally politicians.
literally attorneys general.
Yeah.
So Kam Woods gets to play, and they play him off the bench more minutes than anyone else off the bench. Mm-hmm. He grabs 9 points, 4 rebounds, looks pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And now it's, okay, great. We finally were kind of figuring out our chemistry. Now we obviously have to get this guy minutes. And as soon as MJ Rice is healthy, he's obviously going to have to up his role. There's a lot of adjusting going on for this NC State team.
And Diarra just coming back. He only played 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. So Diarra, a post player, because he missed the previous game against Tennessee Martin.
Even though they said they might have been able to play him.
Yeah,
like
they really wanted to push him.
But then against Tennessee, when they did need him, they still only played him a couple minutes.
Yeah.
So again, it's just who's in. It's like who's on first. This guy's playing, this guy's not. He's ineligible. Now he's eligible. He's back in from injury, and he's going to play a bunch. Actually, he's going to play less minutes. That guy, we could have played him, but we didn't. But then when we needed to play him, we didn't. It's a who's on first situation.
So Coach Keatts hasn't really had his full roster fully healthy yet at all this season. So they're really figuring this out, even though, you're almost 10 games or so into the season, still trying to figure this thing out is Coach Keatts. And ACC play is going to be starting up here in just a matter of weeks. I know they've already played one ACC game, so I'm talking full-go ACC.
Appetizer.
Really just here in about 3 weeks, we're full-on ACC play, and he's really going to have to figure this thing out pretty quickly. But the Kam Woods thing that you mentioned about, for those who may have missed last week, the whole
the lawsuit against the NCAA.
Lawsuit against the NCAA.
And then there was a temporary restraining order that said 2 weeks. They needed to, or they weren't allowed to enforce transfer waiver rules. Mm-hmm. And then the NCAA, I don't know if there was court pressure to do this or if they just volunteered it. They said, you know what? Let's just
mutually came to an agreement.
Yeah, probably some kind of arbitration. They decided that the two-time transfer waiver rules would not be enforced until after spring sports.
They're going to revisit it after spring sports. So that's why a guy like Kam Woods was able to play. Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why we haven't seen him so far yet this season, because he was a part of that two-time transfer waiver. So he was ready to go. He was anxious to play, ready to go. And like you said, put up 9 points in 18 minutes. So who knows what their rotation is going to be like for NC State moving forward. They got to figure that out fast.
Exactly. They have to figure it out and figure out who, like Diarra, Rice, like, are they available or not? Right? Because if they're, like, I'm almost like, if they're hurt and not ready to play, don't play them. Mm-hmm. Because putting them in for 5 minutes just throws off someone else's rhythm. Put them in for 10 minutes throws off someone else's rhythm. Like, if they're playing, play them. And it's very tough for them. So they have their challenges before they kind of break through that ceiling that I was talking about and start beating the top 10, top 15 teams in the country, rather than just being like, hey, they look good.